Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Courtney and I am a full-time reseller on Poshmark and eBay. If you're not new, thanks so much for coming back. It always means the world to me. So I'm here today with a really exciting video for me, and it's the third part of my little reseller numbers video series. So if you're new to the channel and you don't know anything about me, I am a full-time reseller. I went full-time November of 2018. I started reselling part-time July of 2018, and my background or my previous careers have all been sales, marketing, business strategy related. And with that experience, a lot of what I did was either sit in meetings or prepare for meetings, and that was a lot of my day. Preparing for meetings meant analyzing data and coming up with different strategies to improve my teams and the performance and the success of certain things. So although my job as a reseller is slightly different, there's a lot more operational aspects, there's a lot more customer service aspects, etc. There's still this part of me and my experience that wants to dive into data, wants to understand things from a numbers perspective. And so I decided to share some of what I was learning. So if you could tell by the title in this video, the concept of this is how many items do I need to sell in order to make six figures a year. Now, that might not be something that you're aiming for. Maybe you're part-time, maybe you're full-time, but you're in an area or you've got multiple incomes in your family. So what we're all aiming for is probably slightly different. But I do see a lot of large resellers take great pride in either being six-figure or seven-figure sellers. And I think the six-figure sellers, what I can see is a lot of them don't have teams, so they're able to do it on their own. And as I'm learning as a full-time reseller, I want to know where I need to get to, what I need to do to get there, in order to not just pay my bills, which is important, but also hopefully build my savings, reinvest in the business so that I can continue to kind of grow and have a little bit more cushion. That's my dog Luna. If you're new here, she occasionally makes a tail appearance. So I tried to keep this as simple as possible. I have been thinking about this video for months now, and to be perfectly honest, I can get quite complicated with my analysis, and I didn't want to make this too complicated. I wanted it to be relatively simple. So I'm going to start off by giving an example of average sale price and average cost of goods. And the reason I just chose one is because it's something I see is most common for people, or something close to what's common for people. And I am focusing more on Poshmark and eBay, but a lot of this could apply to Mercari, Depop, if you're doing like, I'm not going to say Amazon because I'm not familiar with Amazon too much, but if you're doing maybe like local marketplaces and stuff like that, anything where you're reselling, a lot of this could be applied to as well. So with that, if you know, I like to shop at the bins, but I also shop at regular thrift stores. So this example is not specific to me, just kind of a generalized example. So I'm going to not only cover what it would take to get to six figures each year, the annual income, but I'm also going to give a couple lesser amounts in case that's something that is more realistic for you. So I'm going to pop up some numbers and kind of go through this and try to keep this as brief as possible while still trying to get the point across. At the end, I'm going to also share a few of the things that I didn't include. Keep in mind, this is for example purposes. It's not including everything because certain things vary, but I feel like it's at least a good starting place to kind of inspire some thought around what it would take. So to get started, the average sale price I chose for this example is $25. And the reason for that is it's kind of where I've been sitting. Is I sell a lot of $10 items and I sell a lot of $50 items, and then kind of everything in between, and it balances out to approximately $25 average sale price for me. I see a lot of people also sharing that number, so I feel like it's a pretty good even number to use in this example. The average cost of goods that I chose is $5. Again, a nice simple number that's also fairly realistic. So no matter where you're sourcing, whether it be Goodwill, Salvation Army, Savers, the bins, maybe a variety of all of it, I feel like there are sales some days, and some days you go on normal days, and sometimes you spend up for things, and sometimes you get them at the, for significantly less, or yard sales, or so there's so much variance. But I feel like $5 is a pretty reasonable average cost of goods to use in this example. I'm going to use Poshmark fees for this, and the reason is because eBay fees are a little bit more complicated, and although technically they're a little bit less in fees, there's still cost of things like the eBay stores and certain things like that. So I feel like Poshmark 20% is kind of the easiest thing to use in this example, which is, in this situation, it would be $5. 20% of 25 would be $5. And the shipping supplies for me, if you haven't seen that video, I think I talked about shipping supplies. For me, for this example, is about 13 cents per package going out. And so that's just the example I'm going to use. You might not have the cost of anything besides a piece of paper to print your label, maybe some tape, maybe you get your stuff for free, but this is what I'm using. So if you take those, the $25 average sale price, the $5 cost of goods, the Poshmark fees of $5, and the profit comes out not including any time spent, which I'll get into that at the end, comes out to $14.87 that you could consider a profit. So if you wanted to make six figures, and I'll start with that, if you wanted to make a six figures, just an even 100K in 1 year, how many items would you need to sell to achieve that if you were working with the numbers that I already provided? So that would break down, if you work better by month, that would break down to $8,333 each month. So in order to achieve that, you would need to sell 6,725 items in the total year to hit that number. Again, assuming you've got the average sale price of 25, the average cost of goods of 5, et cetera, et cetera. Now, again, if you work better by month or by day, that would equal 560 items per month or 18 items per day. So it's a lot. And if you follow anyone like I do who manages to do these kinds of numbers, if you are relatively new and I'm less than a year, that can seem daunting, or wow, am I ever going to get there? But I've seen a number of people do it. They work hard, they source smart, and they get a lot of stuff up to sell a lot of stuff. And I'm super impressed to be following a number of those resellers who are doing this. And I think it's important or helpful for me to see what it takes to get there. So let's say six figures, 100,000 is not your cup of tea. You don't care about it. It's not what you're aiming for, which is totally fine. Let's just cut that in half and say you're going for 50,000, which is, I think, in most parts of the country, not some of the bigger cities like where I previously lived, but most of the country, I think that's a pretty reasonable annual income. You would be looking at about $4,167 per month if you were aiming for that. So that would equal 280 items per month and 9 items per day. That definitely seems more reasonable, more doable, more, I think, a little less scary, a little less daunting. But again, if you're new, that could seem, if you're not even getting one sale a day, that could seem daunting. So I think it does take time and effort and hard work and all of that stuff, but that's a little bit more of a manageable number. And maybe you're even saying 50,000 is just way out of the ballpark for you and you're not aiming for that. If you're just going for something like 35,000, which I think in a lot of parts of the country is kind of a typical starting salary at a lot of jobs, that would break down to about $2,916 per month that you would be bringing in. And that would require you to sell 2,354 items in the year, which is 196 per month or 6 per day. So a couple things to consider now that I've broken that down that I haven't included. So I'm sure I'll still get comments because I usually do, even if I include the information later in the video. This is not including a number of things. This is not including time. So time to source, time to process your inventory, time to share if it's Poshmark, list, shipping and handling, etc. The list goes on. There's a lot of time involved in this job, and it's not including any of that. Why is time important for me specifically to think of? Because if you take Poshmark, for example, is a very time-consuming reselling platform or selling platform. And with that, if you're listing 50 items on Poshmark and 50 items on another site that doesn't require quite as much social aspect of time, you might spend less time selling the same amount of items on another platform. So if you are selling on Poshmark, for me, I do like to incorporate time in my calculations, but I didn't use it here because that's not something everyone deals with. The gas, mileage, car maintenance, that varies from person to person. And if you know anything about me, you know I have to drive pretty much everywhere. I'm pretty remote, so my gas or my mileage to get to and from the post office, to and from sourcing, to and from really anything business related is a little bit more than probably most people, so I didn't want to calculate that. Inventory space and storage. So I currently use a lot of my house. I'm hoping to get a storage shed to move most of my inventory in the near future. And but that costs, even if it's space, that's still technically, there's a cost to it or there's value to it. And I know some people write it off for tax purposes and whatnot, but excluding all of that, you could be renting out a room that you're using. So there's value and there's cost to just taking up space, at least for me, maybe not for everyone. And the other thing I didn't think of or I didn't include in this was bad buys or damaged items. So I have items that I probably shouldn't have purchased that sit for, way too long that I end up pulling and donating or just getting rid of. Or damaged items. You get home and you've thought you've looked everything over and you paid the money, and I find that at thrift stores and at the bins. So I didn't include that because I kind of just calculate a little bit more on my my cost of goods to incorporate those types of things. The other thing I didn't include on this that I have included in the past is sales tax. Sales tax is something that eBay and Poshmark are currently working through, effective April 1st. And I don't talk about taxes. My dad's a CPA. I don't feel comfortable talking about taxes because I think any discussion around it could be perceived as advice. And I'm not an accountant and I probably will never will be. So sales tax, if you don't know anything about it, things are changing with Poshmark and eBay and the way they're handling it. So I didn't include it in this calculation. However, I will say I am personally still paying California sales tax for anyone in California that purchases something from me. And that is separate from eBay and Poshmark until all this stuff gets worked out with them. A number of other things that I didn't include because this is kind of just any job that you have. So if you have a salary, if someone gives you a job offer and they give you a job offer of $50,000, you don't get a check for that exact amount. They deduct healthcare, retirement, healthcare, retirement, income taxes, Social Security, those kinds of things, and then you kind of get what's remaining. So I didn't include those because those are just kind of part of any job. And then the other thing I didn't include, or the last thing, was savings. If you're doing this full time and you don't have a steady paycheck, I think it's probably pretty important to have savings for when it's maybe an off month or an off day or week. You kind of have something to dip into to help make sure you can still pay your bills. So those are the things I didn't include. The time, again, I'm not covering here in great detail, but it's something I am personally digging into. And the reason is because if I get to a point where I decide to hire an employee or two, I want to know how much do I have to pay someone else to do this kind of work and what's left over that would actually be profit for me if I wasn't doing that work. So processing an item that's steaming, taking photos, packaging it up, putting it in storage. I estimate about $2 per item. Sharing, so again, if you're paying someone to do sharing on Poshmark specifically, maybe that item, sells in 3 months and you share it once per day every day, breaks down to about $1. Shipping and handling, I estimate just a little under $1, about 87 cents for each item that is, again, with the numbers that I used in the beginning. So the profit after all that time, if I wasn't doing that work, would obviously be less, but there would still be a profit. So what can you do to maybe hit those numbers, and maybe you aren't able to do those numbers in items sold each month. So there's two main things, and I think you're probably already thinking of them. One being lower your cost of goods. So if you don't have Goodwill outlets near you, understandable. I drive 2.5 hours each way to get to Goodwill outlets. It is in the same state, but I think in a lot of parts of the country that could just be crossing states for a lot of people. But it is not close to me, and it's not close to a lot of people. I make the drive approximately once per week because I do find that the cost of goods, which is $1.99 per pound of clothing, and the drive mileage and time still is a better deal than me going sourcing at regular thrift stores. So that's my current strategy, is just lower my cost of goods. I probably will never give up regular thrift stores. So for me, I'm just trying to, okay, if I could get that $5 average cost of goods in this example down to $3, that is a huge or significant difference in cost of goods when you start adding things up. The other thing you can do is have a higher average sale price. And I know that with me personally, I have really struggled. Okay, I'm only going to source things that are going to bring in $30 or more, and consistently. So with confidence, not that you're just going to price things out of whack. But what I learned with that was there's a lot of people buying a lot of $10 to $20 items, and those are sometimes what's paying my bills. But I don't go sourcing a lot, and the time to source, so if I were to only spend a lot of time sourcing to find those higher priced items, that time I could be spent doing other things, and that could be the things like listing the $10 and $20 items. So for me, I don't like the pressure too much of only having higher average sale price. So that's my focus personally, is just really focusing on lowering my cost of goods and then maintaining a good average sale price, which for me, 25, it makes sense. I like every sale that brings in a profit. So with that, I just wanted to come on here and share with you just some of the numbers that I've been digging into. Again, this is just an example. There are things I did not cover. So there's a big ETC or etc. after this, but I just wanted to inspire some thought around maybe setting some goals or how you can maybe achieve some things that you're aiming for. I know it helps me, and I thought it might help you guys. So if you liked this video, definitely feel free to hit the thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.